5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Midnight. All over the world, the sky explodes with light, sound, and celebration. Strangers hug each other. Some people laugh. Some people cry. For a few seconds, millions of hearts beat in the same rhythm. But here is the real question. Did you know where the celebration of the New Year actually came from? Who started this tradition? Long before fireworks, long before calendars, long before January 1st even existed. The New Year was born in a very different world. Long before calendars, people followed the sky, the sun, the moon, the stars. Time was written in light and darkness. Winter meant hunger, cold, darkness. If the light did not return, people would die. Every day, they watched the horizon, waiting to see if the sun would rise higher than yesterday. And then, one day, the light stayed longer. The darkness began to retreat. This was not a holiday. It was a signal in the dark, a fragile sign of survival. People gathered, they sang, they moved, they celebrated the simplest truth. They were still alive. Their new year meant only one thing. We survived another cycle of time and dared to hope for the next. Thousands of years later, this feeling would grow into real traditions, real celebrations, real New Years. For the first time in history, humans stopped wandering across the land. They stayed in one place, they built shelters, and for the first time, they waited for the seasons. The river became their first true calendar. Its floods decided when to plant, when to rest, and who would survive the year. People no longer counted days by fear and darkness. They counted them by the sun, by the moon, by light and by shadow. For them, the new year did not begin with fireworks or celebration. It began with seeds placed into cold soil and hope placed into the future. The new year slowly became a celebration of planting, of shared work, of the promise of food that had not yet grown. In ancient Rome, time was no longer guessed. It was ruled, measured, controlled by the state. One man changed everything, Julius Caesar. He redesigned the calendar of the empire. January was named after Janus, the god with two faces, looking to the past and to the future. By Caesar's decree, January 1st became the beginning of the year, not by nature, but by law. Fire was no longer the only center. Stones replaced circles of people. Tribes became cities, and time entered history. A mark for a day, a cycle for a season, a year carved into wood. Time was no longer felt, it was measured. Civilizations changed. Empires rose and fell. But the road of the year, from beginning to beginning, remained. The new year was no longer only survival. It became a meeting, a shared fire, a shared moment of joy. Fire turned into candles. Marks turned into numbers. The ritual slowly became what we now call a holiday. Before Christmas trees, there were sacred forests. People believed eternity lived inside evergreen branches. When all nature seemed to die, one thing stayed green. The tree became a sign that life had survived. In the north of Europe, evergreens became ritual symbols. They were not decorations, they were prayers. They hung fruits for the sun, nuts for strength, bread for survival. Then Christianity came, and the old symbols did not disappear. They were transformed. The tree became the tree of life, not of forest, but of faith, a promise that life endures even in the coldest season. In medieval Europe, trees entered homes, slowly, quietly, bringing a breath of life into the darkest season. By the 16th century, the first Christmas trees appeared. Not everywhere, but forever. The forest became a home. The ritual became a tradition. The tree became a symbol of warmth, of memory, of life that refuses to fade. At first, people used what they had: apples, nuts, and real fire. The light was beautiful, but dangerous. One spark, and everything could burn. In Germany, fire surrendered to glass. The spark became a glow, safer, brighter, a little miracle in every home. For the first time, the tree did not burn. It shimmered, quietly, beautifully, as if finally alive. Then electricity arrived. One click, and darkness surrendered. The night learned to shine. No smoke, no fear, only light, clean, bright. A new kind of magic humans had never seen before. Fire transformed into glass. Glass burst into light. And the light kept going. Further, brighter, until it felt infinite. A single voice traveled through the air. One signal, one countdown, connecting millions who had never met. People left their warm homes and filled the streets. The roads became rivers of light, all carrying them toward one moment, waiting ahead. The tree left the warmth of the home. It rose into the cold city night, a gift of light for everyone who passed by. 10, 9, and suddenly the whole world paused, millions of hearts holding the same breath. Different cities, different voices. But when midnight arrives, the world moves together as one heartbeat. Light, sound, and an explosion of joy that no one could hold back. The celebration stepped into every home, through a glowing screen, through flickers of light, connecting millions who had never met. The ritual turned into a broadcast. The night transformed into a stage, and suddenly, the whole world watched as one audience. In New York, millions wait in one square. One ball, one moment, 1-0. In Tokyo, the new year begins in silence, with bells, with bows, with light. In Paris, the night becomes romance, kisses, laughter, fire over the Seine. In the South, the new year burns with heat, music, dancing, fire in the streets. Sometimes, the most meaningful celebration isn't loud at all. It's a small, warm room, a shared meal, a moment that feels like home. Different skies, different constellations, but 1 second unites us. Quiet, bright, shared across the world. Different cultures, different traditions. One planet, one new year. Thousands of years ago, we waited for fire in the dark. Today, we wait for light in the sky. Across all centuries, across all borders, we still wait for the same thing: light after darkness. What do you wait for every new year?